Okay, let's get started. We have a fantastic plenary panel coming up next. And welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the breakout sessions and maybe learned something new and made a new connection. Before we get started, I wanted to thank our sponsors for the conference. They're listed here on your screen, and we really appreciate your support. So this next session that we're doing today is going to be about co-creation. And again, I recognize this is a buzzword and maybe popular right now. So we actually want to unpack that during this session and really talk about the principles behind co-creation and what we want to pull forward into our work. This session has a similar session, a sister session, tomorrow that will be during our in-person conference in Seattle. This session is meant to be representing people outside the United States, those that are in closer proximity to the work. Tomorrow will be a session of people who live and are from the United States. And we want the two sessions to inform each other in the true spirit of co-creation. And again, I'm so glad to have these speakers representing countries all over the world. Semi is from Fiji, Yvonne is from Argentina, and Yussuf is from Guinea-Bissau. And Becky is joining us too from Uganda as the moderator. So with that, I will turn it over to Becky. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Greetings, everyone from Uganda. I want to start by welcoming everyone in your respective capacities as we come together to talk about co-creation. I would say today is a great day for me for being part of this team. I also want to thank the organizers for enabling this to happen today. It's a great day for many of us I know who are outside the US. You say the term co-creation is so popular over there, but it may not be as popular as it is in the other parts of the world. And I'm glad to say that today this session brings many of us from many parts of the world to come and learn about co-creation, unlearn certain aspects of co-creation, and also relearn to make it a better model that can improve on global development. The purpose of this session or this conference is to bring together or to create a space for global development practitioners to learn about the co-creation model, define problems that could only be solved through partnerships, which I think we are beginning now, and to lay a groundwork for a more innovative and equitable solutions so that this global development we're talking about is equally distributed with relevance to the beneficiaries. I want to welcome all of you so that we talk through this together to allow us come up with better strategies of partnership through co-creation. I have already been introduced by Christine. My name is Rebecca. I work for Geneva Global here in Uganda. And we shall be talking about co-creation with three panelists. Ivan, you can wave to the people. We'll be having Sane, please wave. And Yussuf. Yussuf, wave to the people. Particularly today, the theme of this conference revolves around co-creation for global development. we are hoping that through this session, we will redefine co-creation and how best it can be applied. And also, we are going to make learnings from what has worked well and probably what has not worked well, and how we can improve the areas that has not worked well. I know this is a very short period of time given for us, about 55 minutes, but I'm sure out of this session, we are going to be able to rediscover new innovative solutions for partnerships and take the conversation beyond this conference. Once again, I want to welcome you, and I would say enjoy the session with us. I want us to get straight to the discussion, and I'll start with Sane. Sane, what comes to your mind when you hear about the word co-creation?
Thank you, Rebecca, and good morning, good day to you all, whichever part of the world you're joining in from, and a big warm welcome from Fiji. The term co-creation, for us as an organization to define it, I have to put it into context on what does the Rise Beyond the Reef does, and in the context of the areas that we work with, how does it define and how does it shape our work, the term co-creation. So Rise Beyond the Reef was set up to work only with rural and remote communities in Fiji. Rural and remote communities in terms of geographically isolation, access to market, whether it be maritime areas out in those smaller islands in the Pacific, and also to bridge the gap that exists between these remote communities and the aid sector, the gaps that exist between the communities and the private sector and also the government sector. Our entry point to our work in the communities is through women, and we're using economic empowerment and leadership as our flagship program to address the issues that are faced by our communities. So the term co-creation for us, it's about listening, adapting, and evolving together, being there as a long-term partner for our community, rather than just in short-term project life cycles. And another way we have really defined it is and contextualized it in our work is to decolonize the traditional development approaches that we have in our various approach, to make sure that our work is tailored and driven by community-led initiative that are being led by them, and listening to them to provide solutions to the issues that they are facing, that they need support with from our organization. So that's how we define it, in the context of the areas of we work in the South Pacific.
Thank you so much for those several definitions in relation to your context. I wonder what the same term would mean to Ivan in relation to the work Future of the Fish does.
Gracias. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm gonna share screen here. I'm not going to pass any presentation, but I'm gonna help myself with couple of pictures. So I work in Future of Fish Chile. Future of Fish is based in the US originally, and now we have an office in Chile. And the word co-design, I will use this word, it's kind of a sister word for co-creation, has been always something very central since I started in the organization. It basically for us, sorry, I will briefly say what we do. We work in Chile in trying to leverage or to improve commercial capacity of fisher organizations. And we do it directly with fisher organizations or indirectly doing partnerships with the ones that have been already working with them. And we are kind of working with the fisher organizations and with these organizations that are with them for long term. At the same time, it's kind of an hybrid model that we are reshaping all the time. I was saying that it's co-design has been always central for us, but it hasn't been the same since we started using it. You are seeing a photo of what was originally our co-design ideas. This is in San Antonio, Chile, central region of Chile, Caleta Cove place in a urban context, and those are a lot of stakeholders convened for a co-design session in 2018, I think it was. Out of those, 3 members are fishers. So our idea original was convening all these stakeholders, bringing a lot of innovation into it, building ideas in one marathonic session like this one. Pull out some models that were shaped by those plasticine things that you're seeing there, playing around with a lot of post-its, like bringing all the ideas, not only from the fisheries sector, but also from other perspectives. That's why a lot of members were convened by then. And then we would pull out some material, some raw material, and we would go, our interdisciplinary team would go into a room and come out with brilliant ideas that would solve the problems that were brought by fishers in those sessions. It's not that easy, of course. So answering your question, Rebecca, I think I will briefly coin a term that it's used by a professor in North Carolina, Arturo Escobar. He's Colombian, but teaches in North Carolina, and he uses the term ontological design. And I think this term is useful for us for understanding how we now see what is co-design. Ontological design basically says that the designs, the approaches for design need to reshape the ones that are designing. So if I'm designing or I'm one of the stakeholders convened there, by the simple design, I'm gonna deconstruct and reconstruct my idea of the world or my worldview. So we can use worldview and ontology as synonyms. So ontological design would be a design that would reshape your own worldview towards the approach. So now, today, we are much more into those lines. We are kind of, we have Future of Fish Chile. We are not now depending of US members traveling from abroad into co-design sessions, but we have most of our team in Chile. I'm from Argentina, and we have a much more collaborative and place-based approach to it. We totally talk to each other all the time, WhatsApp groups, pain points being pulled out by the fisher organizations. We are fighting each other. We are constantly designing in a different way, and this is kind of reshaping our way to understand the problems that were proposed by them. So comparing the 2018 and our today's approach, we have changed into a much more collaborative approach, I would say.
Thank you very much, Evans, for elaborating a lot on what the term co-creation means to you and your organization. I'm wondering what Yussuf has to tell us from Tostan.
Thank you, Becky, and boa tarde to everyone joining us on the call today. I work with Tostan, which is an Africa-based US NGO, and we work out of 5 countries in West Africa at the moment. I would say co-creation is really at the heart of Tostan's mission, which is to empower communities to develop and realize their vision of the future based on their view of well-being. And we work with communities to design a vision of the future and support them in a process that enables them to navigate towards that vision. And for Tostan, I would say historically, programmatically, and today even strategically, co-creation is a founding principle as much as it is a participatory process that includes learning and adaptations of those learnings. And so Tostan first started community development work through education with communities in West Africa 3 decades ago. And at the time, we focused on addressing quite a very basic need, which is access to information, and access to information in a language that communities can understand. And so this access to information enabled communities to better respond to their own aspirations in a holistic way. It encouraged them to organize decision-making in a participatory way, in an inclusive way, and in ways that also eventually improved access to education, better health practices, economic empowerment, and their management of the environment. And with Tostan, and as with learning in general, the more we learn, the more we want to learn. And so as communities learned what was essential for them and for their own development, the demand for new knowledge and new skills continued to grow. And what we have today as Tostan's Community Empowerment Program, which is our flagship empowering education program, it evolved as the communities were sharing lessons from their own experience with the program, and as they requested new knowledge and skills based on their vision and on the changing global realities. And thanks to our partner communities' requests and guidance, Tostan conducted participatory reviews of its program to include democracy, human rights, hygiene, project management, and use of new technologies for learning and development, as well as peace and security, and strengthening collaboration with decentralized government offices. In 2023, next year, we will launch our next strategic engagement plan, which will take us from 2023 to 2030. And the strategy itself was developed with our partner communities. And this co-creation experience, which I believe we will explore more in the future, it was recently summarized by one of the leaders of our partner communities in the region of Ecwou in Guinea-Bissau. Her name is Mariama Saidi, and she's a member of her village's community management committee. And she said after her experience in the strategy development process, that with this strategy, we, the communities, are a part of Tostan just as much as Tostan has been a part of us. And I really believe that that symbolizes the co-creation experience. And I'm looking forward to working with Mariama and other community leaders to take forward this new strategy that we have co-created for Tostan and with the communities that we hope to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Yussuf. Thank you. I'll have more follow-up questions for both you and Evan to let us know you've talked so well about the progress of evolvement of co-creations in both of the organizations, but I don't hear you talk about any challenges you've met along the way. Maybe in a minute, I would allow you to cite for us 1 or 2 setbacks that you could have encountered along the way. And then we could also hear from Evan whether the same challenges cut across the 2 different parts of the world for learning purposes. Please, Yussuf, 1 minute.
Thank you, Becky. Very good question, and I'll be short. I think one of the main challenges we face is that communities, as they're learning, their standards in their vision or their aspirations grow, even within the period of our 3-year program. we may have a community develop a vision in the very beginning. And of course, as they're learning about democracy and human rights, gaining new knowledge, their aspirations become higher. I think that's one main challenge. It's a good challenge to have. Also, we realize that they may have some parts of their vision that may not be realized within the 3 years of our program, and parts of their vision that perhaps require more partnerships. And I think that's a very important part of the advice that we've received from our partner communities to promote also partnerships that deepen connections with our partner communities to resources and deepen connections to new kinds of partnerships. And so I think very much what we will see in the next strategy is Tostan working in a new partnership dynamic to support communities to realize aspects of their vision that they may not realize within the 3 years of our empowering education program.
Ivan, what is it at your part of the world?
So I will take the last part of what Yussuf mentioned about the key word for me there is time. So when you arrive with an interdisciplinary team and you have these beautiful designs that are very good for also for photos and for understanding and for kind of also for pulling out ideas, they're very good at the methodological aspects of using plasticine and stuff like that in one marathonic session. But the outcome are kind of brilliant potential schemes and ideas that create expectations for the main stakeholders or beneficiaries. And that's where I was identified by what Yussuf was saying. Delivering aspects of those ideas in a time lapse that is consistent with the expectations created by such an event, it's almost impossible. You need to create, as Yussuf was saying, partnerships, apply for funds, things that you didn't plan beforehand. And actually, San Antonio now has a processing plan, and having that processing plan took 3 years since the initial co-design that we had with those plasticines. So I would say that's kind of the main challenge there.
Yes, I know at the end of the session, we should be making some suggestions on solutions so that members here get out with some kind of learning so that upcoming organizations or interventions do not fall into the same trap. So Sane, you've been quiet for some time. Tell us with examples what has worked well with the work of Rise Beyond the Rift, and also what hasn't worked well and probably why.
Thanks, Rebecca. You know, for us, through the process of listening, we can understand the gaps that traditional NGOs approaches and are able to address them. And that's what I wanted to add on to what my colleagues have shared early, is one of the challenges with co-creations or involving communities is oftentimes that donors, when they allocate funding, the funds comes with certain criteria, and even M&Es are already set. So when you involve community, oftentimes their input are often being overseen or not recognized in the process, because of when we organizations that are boots on the ground receive funding, we have to work within the criteria or the definitions of components of the work that are being supported by these donors. And in co-creation, it's for us, it's again, it comes back to how we do our things by listening to them, understanding what are the gaps that are existed in there, then identifying what are some of the vessels of the way. So to put it into an example, the issues with the shifting gender norms and the gender dynamics that we are trying to address in our community, we use economic empowerment, women economic empowerment, and support them and strengthen them for women in our partner communities to be able to find their voice and make their choice within their own household, within their own village and their own tribe. We believe that they need to be economically empowered. So once they have that or stand on that platform, it helps to shift some of those the dynamics that exist within their communities. I started off by saying that for us is listening, and that's the work that guides. Listening is what guides our work in the community. We call it radical listening. This is when we listen to the community to try and understand how do they articulate their needs. The funding criteria may say this is the number 1, number 2, and number 3, but when you sit and listen to the community, their number 1 and number 2 and number 3 is totally different. So understanding what are their priorities and using that as a compass to the work that we do oftentimes takes things longer than is expected by our partners to make sure that we see transformational changes that happens in the community. So in the economic empowerment, after so many years of women earning money, they started to be empowered within their own household and their own community, and started to see the shift in how they are being viewed in their community. And that has are the various ways in which we see and employ the process of listening and understanding the gaps that other NGOs approaches that we co-created with the community. What are the various ways in which we can employ them? This is to make sure that leads to transformational changes in their community. And one of the big things that we've identified is the market linkages for our women in our economic empowerment work. In the disaster response of our work, these are common things that we see a lot in the small island nations in the Pacific. Every year we have to expect that if it's not flooding, if it's not drought, it's a Category 5 storm that is going to hit our island nations, and our rural and remote communities are the ones who are always suffering from loss of generational wealth because of the cost and the impact of climate change. And we have to not always, for us, our work is not always about the last Category 5 storm, but how do we prepare our community for the next Category 5 storm, for them to be resilient. And things that we have done with our communities is the idea of always be ready to salvage storm debris to help rebuild themselves after the cyclone. The traditional approaches in disaster response is that the rural and remote communities are the ones who are always the recipient of this response, where foods are being brought or medical supplies from outside and supplied to them. And these are rural and remote communities. During disaster, there may be broken bridges, landslide, things they cannot do. Outside response team will struggle to reach them. So for us, we have 3 components to our disaster response that we've co-created with our partner communities. One is instilling of human dignity. That's where we have a portable sawmill, and we work with the community to salvage storm debris so that they can rebuild basic structure, to put roof over their head after a mega storm has gone by. Establishing of a community food bank. When we move into disaster, cyclone season, storing of seeds and short-term crop, so that instead of waiting for food to be supplied from outside, they can plant a short-term crop that can feed the communities in the short while. And the last one is for disaster response is economic recovery. We believe that to put money in the pocket of people, indigenous community, they will be on their feet to help redesign how they want to recover from a disaster. So we in our work at Rise Beyond the Reef, we rolled out a product line that is called Shelter from the Storm. These are the product that are being produced after the storm by salvaging storm debris that can be turned into a product, and they can sell it as many of them. And this is the reality for a small island nation in the Pacific, the constant loss of generational wealth after a mega storm, whether it'll be your house, whether it'll be your farm, crops or livestock. For these communities that we work with, they're far away from town, and when they want to go, their bank is their farm, their crop, their livestock. If they want to go send their kids to school, those are the things they tap into for financial support to support them either to go to school or go to the main cities. Then lastly, in the pandemic response, these are some of the things that we learned in Fiji and in many small island nations in the Pacific. There was huge lockdown. Tourist market got shut down, hotels, flights got canceled. So people were in isolation in towns and cities. And with our partner community, this is where we changes how things are being done in traditional approach like disaster, where they are the recipients of disaster response. In pandemic, this rural and remote community turned and supply food and whatever was in season in their community to feed those that were in lockdown and isolation centers. So those are some of the ways that I can share as an example of how we have done and how it has led our work in Fiji and using the co-creation model, using our partner communities to address issues that we are facing. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. I hope our viewers and listeners have picked lessons from that explicit speech of yours. I believe some learning has taken place. I wanted to pose my next question to Yussuf. Yussuf, you've told us a lot about Tostan and the rate at which it evolved. And now we are made to know it is a great organization touching many lives. But the audience would love to know or to learn from Tostan to what extent proximity of leadership as an essential component of co-creation and effective development outcomes has aided Tostan to reach where it has.
Thank you, Becky. That's a very important question, and I think it's also at the root of how we work with communities today. I would say I would start with Molly Melching, who is Tostan's founder, who is was an American woman, very much West African today, who was inspired and influenced by her communities by communities that she lived and worked in West Africa. And she took the time to learn about the values and the traditions of those communities where she worked. And this would have been more challenging to do if she was based in the US, as the realities in the US, of course, are different, and engagement with the communities directly to learn about them would have been at a much lower level. And so Tostan has extended this principle of being very close to its partner communities in all of our partnerships with communities where we work. And today, what you see is wherever Tostan is working in partnership with a community, there will be a program facilitator who will live there for the duration of the 3 years of Tostan's community empowerment program, or longer if we have post-program initiatives in a community. And this allows the facilitator, the program facilitator, to become a part of the community, while they're also supporting the community to ensure that they achieve their own vision of the future. So the facilitator aims to understand the community's aspirations. The facilitator he or she becomes a trusted source of information, and becomes more aware of existing relationships and dynamics in the community, which can very much promote a positive change. In addition to that, I think it's important also for the leadership in Tostan not only to be close to the communities, but also to be aware of the global environment and global efforts, the global agenda. I think achieving this balance has enabled Tostan to localize global goals in ways that support communities to engage more in their contributions to the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, and to understand how their contributions are linked to the global goals. I remember last year we had an experience. We launched a partnership with 120 communities in the region of Bafata in Guinea-Bissau. And as part of our support also for the regional government, where we are in the region where we're working, we realized an SDG localization exercise as part of the government's regional development planning. And the communities, we learned that the communities were not aware of the SDGs and the global goals. And once they became aware, we started to see with more clarity how much of a contribution they have already made and how open they were to launch community-based initiatives for achieving the SDGs. And so as a result of that, their contributions will now be included in the Bafata region's development plan under a new section on community-based initiatives. And so I see that it's very valuable for leadership to be proximate enough to feel and be considered a part of the communities that we serve, and also aware enough to be able to connect the communities we serve to the global efforts.
Thank you, Yussuf. Somehow I lost connection at some point, but I want to believe our viewers heard you and learned something. I want to take us to almost the last part of our conversation. When you say our time, it's not on our side. So just 5 minutes for each one of us. And I would start with Ivan. Ivan, if an organization based in the US would like to use the co-creation model, what advice would you give them?
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, I was carefully listening. First, there's kind of this idea of going away from the top-down approaches. And this idea of we need to go out of the top-down approaches. And I think that it's very powerful, but has been mainstream. And what this means, I think it's going away from the top-down approaches, we need to deconstruct almost everything. Even sometimes deconstructing words that we have in automatic. For example, Semi was saying something about decolonization. And when we say decolonization, we sometimes need to think about the words we use. For example, let's think in the word development, for example. Yussuf was saying that the SDGs were not understood. I'm using my interpretation here, Yussuf. Sorry if I'm misunderstanding. Were not understood by certain communities, and when they were aware of this, they were kind of matching that with what their own understanding of sustainability was, of what we call sustainability. So I think that's a very powerful lesson, because we come with kind of these approaches of development, sustainable development, and those approaches have, and those words have strong connotations. I lecture a small course in Buenos Aires, and I usually pass the video of Harry Truman's inaugural speech. I think that's how it is called, in the 1949 one, when he is saying there are nations that are underdeveloped and we need to show them the way, or stuff like that. And not trying to make a joke out of it, it's kind of that it was the first time that development term was coined at global level, and it had geopolitical consequences, because all the designs they're coming from the idea that there are developed and underdeveloped countries were very strong in all, for example, the grants, investments, or even the multilateral organisms coming from it. My point here is, what is development? Who says what it needs to be developed? Taking some of anecdotes about natural disasters and stuff like that. What is to be improved? What is to be out of some pain points that you have locally in your community? Who dictates that? Who shapes that? Who designs that? I think that it's very important that in order to, coming back to my initial comment, if we want to go out from the top-down approaches, we need to start doing those exercises. And I want to share a small point, a complementary point here. If I want to answer in your question, Rebecca, well, my first point was, you need to deeply go away from the top-down approaches, and you can get like very philosophical in doing so. But other more pragmatic is, and taking again this time pain point that Sami also was saying, this is 2018, and this is the processing plan that they are co-designing here, the ideas, 2022. It takes time. And here my advice would be, now completely answering your question, Rebecca, my advice would be, there must be theories of change in the designs or the organizations that are designing with co-creating with communities that include the local design phases within the project. So investors or grant donors or impact investors should calculate this time of design and be humble in the sense of, okay, we have a general goal, but then to get to that goal, maybe the paths are not surfaced yet. So in order to do that, we need a time frame placed with, let's say, 18 months, where the community is gonna have the goals in order to get into those paths. And that's impact on itself. You don't need to measure that with like, okay, you were designing for 18 months, what's your impact? Your impact is exactly convening community, having the design there, that it's very powerful on itself, and then take it from there. That would be kind of my main advice for I was targeting more, for example, impact investors or grant donors. That would be my advice.
Ivan, thank you so much. I hope your advice has been taken. I know people are noting down. Sami, what advice would you give?
Thanks, Rebecca. Well, for an outside organization, my advice would focus on what you do best in your context. Don't try and come and implement in a country you are not from or have long-term relationship with it. But you can be transformative by supporting organizations that do, and do not use foreign evaluators for your M&E on their own. They must be paired with local M&E staff to translate cultural nuances and framework. These are some of the gaps, some of the times that when we come in with a lens for an outside lens, it's always hard to really see some of the transformational changes that indigenous or local communities are defining as an impact. Because of the lack of knowledge and the context, we oftentimes overlook that. When they are saying that this is how it has improved my life, when a woman is saying this is how it has empowered me, but it oftentimes it does not always fit the narratives of the outside framework. So to pair it with the local so that they can translate it and contextualize what they are saying. That would be my advice, Rebecca. Thanks again.
Thank you. And Yussuf, what would your advice be?
I would have to echo Semi from his earlier comment when he said he emphasized listening to communities. I think it's very important that we listen to the communities that we serve to better understand how we can serve. It also shows that we care and respect for our partner communities, that we have human feelings towards them, and we are open to learning with them. And communities are our partners, and we believe that they can also contribute to our learning and our own development as organizations, as growth, as we learn. And so it may be useful to have models and frameworks that are prepackaged, but it's important to be aware that if we want to succeed with communities, we need the communities to engage. We need them to share their own knowledge and their experiences and their lessons learned. Second, I would say focus on strengths-based approaches and perhaps promote voice as well, echoing Semi again. And in our context in West Africa, as we work at the grassroots, we learned and we saw that the marginalized groups in communities, such as women and youth, they have so much potential. But these groups also tend to have less confidence in their own capacity. And we see this at the very outset of our programming. And we see that the pace of decision-making may be limited for certain people because they're just taking on new roles in this new program. And so it's very helpful to create the space for communities to understand and work from their strengths and practice voice. One example really is what we have in our partner communities. We work through learning centers in communities that we open. And very often you will see that women, more frequently women, have less confidence in sharing their ideas. And in the classroom experience, by working and sharing in small groups, they gain confidence by sharing their ideas in small groups, and then sharing back with the wider group. And through time, gradually, their confidence grows to the point where they're organizing awareness raising, outreach activities with the wider communities. And by the third year of the program, you will see women who were once very shy, timid, in the beginning in the classes, are now organizing public declarations for respect for human rights on a national scale. So I think it's very important to acknowledge that strengths exist in every community. Every community has a potential, and we should really promote the voices of the people who are marginalized so that we can allow them to also come into their strength. Finally, I would advise to prepare to build on lessons learned with communities. We often learn from communities' experiences, and we share these learnings with new partner communities. Especially when we work in clusters of communities, we find that this knowledge and experience that we're taking from one community and sharing with another community is relevant and it's valuable because the context and the realities are quite similar. And this was one of the lessons from the COVID period, is that when we shared the successes of one community with another nearby community, then this success story became the new standard for the community that we're sharing with. So the possibility was now open to them in a way that they were not initially aware of. And as a result, we do this quite often, where we share success stories from one community to another. And as a result, what we see is really communities learning from communities and communities leading communities to realize their own aspirations for well-being. And this we've seen with COVID, it can happen even in the most challenging of times. So really prepare to build on lessons learned.
Thank you very, very much, Yussuf. Thank you all the panelists for that great discussion. I want to believe all participants here are walking away different. From the general discussion, I think one key learning or an overall learning that I take from this discussion has been deconstructing and reconstructing of partnership, of co-creation, if it is indeed to lead to global development. And I want to believe all of us here in our various capacities is going to strive towards achieving this deconstruction and reconstruction, so that at another time we are coming to discuss our successes, especially for us from the receiving end. Many of our discussants have been from low-income and middle-income economies. I want to thank each one of you, the discussants, for your careful thoughts, for your research on this topic. And I have also learned a lot, and I want to believe that most of what you've shared, I do personally believe in and share the same thoughts, as we also implement a program here in Uganda that is funded by our parent organization in the US. We've enjoyed co-creation, although I think I enjoyed it unknowingly. I'll be more conscious henceforth. And I want to believe that this kind of conferences are very healthy, and I want to appreciate the organizers for enabling us to come here. And very big thanks to Christine for coordinating this and ensuring that we are all here in time. Thank you, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Becky. This has been actually fascinating. And again, this is the main theme of our conference today and tomorrow. A couple of the takeaways real quick for me. Words matter, proximity matters, trust, respect, and relationships matter. And most importantly, taking the time to learn with communities matter. Thank you all so much.